Und in diesem Themenfeld begrüßen wir heute Katika Kühnreich. Sie ist Politikwissenschaftlerin, Sinologin, forscht schon seit längerem und ist auch im Chaosumfeld schon seit längerem bekannt für ihre Forschung zu gesellschaftlichen Auswirkungen der Digitalisierung. Ein schwieriges Wort, vielleicht muss ich mir von KI helfen lassen. Die magische KI-Welt wird uns jetzt vorgestellt. Herzlich willkommen.
Danke. And as I was told that you're looking for talks in English as well, this talk will be in English. And I created this talk originally in the beginning of the year, and a lot of things happened since then. So it might be slightly out of date. And thank you for the introduction. Thank you for being here. And yeah. English is not my first language, so you have to suffer together with me. And before I start talking, I'd like to address the point that I'm not going to say the truth, because I'm a scientist, and I can only present you my current state of research. So that's the first point. And the second one is, I will say that in my next talk too, I'm not a designer, as you can see in these slides and on my webpage. It's just there to inform you and to be read easily. And the third point I want to address is work needs money, and if you have spare money, I'm always there to take something for my work. I do not take firstborns anymore, sorry. So this slide is a bit creative. I'm sorry, there were some glitches in it. To give you a better orientation, I would like to start with the structure of the talk. So, everyone talks about AI, but nearly nobody says what they mean. So we have a phrase, but not a lot of meaning, and I would like to change that. So, second question, what does AI need? Third part will be on AI and working conditions. The fourth point is social impact of AI, and we will end with, do we bloody need AI? So, coming for the first point, everyone talks about AI, but nearly nobody says what they mean. Concerning so-called AI, the first problem that hits our faces is the problem of definition. That funny quotes I'm always doing in AI is because I'm not really believing in AI. And there's often no good definition of AI. But the definitions are very important if we are talking to more people than ourselves. And even with ourselves, we should know what we are talking about. So, and a definition is not, I've seen that on TikTok or Telegram. This is not a definition. This might be a source. So, a good definition of artificial is it's not their nature, and intelligence comes from a very dark time, and it is the time when people believed in master races and measuring heads, in measuring noses, and in later getting rid of all the people you thought not being part of the master race. So we should really ask ourselves why we are using that term. So it has to do a lot with eugenics. And in the second talk, we will talk about that this is no accident at all. So who has invented it? Who has invented that magic term saying there is an artificial AI and that's better than human or animal AI? So it's a catchy phrase, and there might be overlapping to the next talk. It was invented by cyberneticists. Cybernetics. This is something people usually don't know a lot about. Maybe you've heard cyber before, that cool term you stick on everything that contains or is related to computer or the internet. Well, cybernetics is the hypothesis of steering or control. Steering of what? Well, of everything. Cybernetics wants to replace all the sciences as well. It wants to become this super science, so to say. And it started during World War II, and it came into life by a British mathematician, Norbert Wiener. And his goals were very nice. I mean, he wanted to stop German weapons of mass destruction by creating machines that will attack every movement this weapon tries to make. So this is a good goal. But what became of it? And the most brilliant introduction into cybernetics that I know of is written by Thomas Ritt, Rise of the Machines. And the quote you can see is that engineers, military thinkers, politicians, scholars, artists, and activists started projecting their hopes and their fears into a future of the thinking machines. And I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that something will happening in the future without having any evidence for it is one major threat in cybernetics. And it might sound like religion, not science, to say, I can see it in the future, everything will be fine. But they see themselves as scientists. And it's as realistic as if your teenager tells you, in the future I will do my tasks, I will do that later. But scientists of cybernetic origin always tell you later technology will be invented that takes care of all the mess they are doing at the moment. So one day they ran out of money. So the people interested in cybernetics didn't get money anymore. They didn't get grants, funds. So what they needed was a catchy phrase. And they invented artificial intelligence. They said they can invent artificial intelligence and in the future everything will be better because of it. So what it is it's a money-spinning scheme. It's like a catchphrase. It's a buzzword to get money from us. And it was first developed founded in the 1950s by John McCarthy and Marvin Minsky, two scientists. And since then, as my colleague Tante says, they're getting it out of the box every 10 years. They dust it a bit and say, we need money because we can give you artificial intelligence and it will work in the future. So you can't say there's only machine learning, there's no artificial intelligence at all. And this works for decades now. So we can say it's just a money spinner for scientists. But why do so many people believe in artificial intelligence now? So it is interesting what kind of history cybernetics made. It started at universities, took a lot of drugs, had an interesting journey through hippie culture, military, in more drugs. And it is very easy to tell people that in the future you will do something good. It's like people grew up with Star Trek, holodeck, everything is fine, they want to live with that, and cyberneticists can say, we will give you that. You can live like in science fiction. So other technologies like the metaverse, that was one of these technologies you couldn't live without 5 years ago, and no one knows what it really is. It's part of this cybernetic universe. But what cybernetic really is, without that promise that something will be happening in the future, is sometimes hard to grasp. And I mentioned Thomas Ritt calls it a myth. So we like myths, we humans. So it's the myth of the thinking machine that will solve our problems in the future, for sure. And maybe we want to have a technology that solves problems, but the question always is that happening? Can we have high-risk technologies like nuclear power, for example, and say that our grandchildren will be able to solve that problem in the future? Or is that putting all the responsibility towards the future kind of very egocentric way of thinking and way of collecting money? Because another thing in these high-risk technologies is that some profits are being privatized while the high risks and getting all this from the soil is being socialized. And the question is if we want to be part of that story. And I said myth. What is a myth? A myth is something that has no evidence at all. It's a story. It's a pre-scientific story often to explain us how we came into the world, how the world was created, a symbolic narrative. And a myth does not need evidence, and this is exactly how cybernetics works. It shows us the picture of a bright future where you don't have to clean anymore because you have a robot for that. And all that scientific, beautiful pictures, but it does not give you any scientifically proven way how to reach that. So you cannot say the same about communism. Communism is a wonderful thought. And when you talk with a lot of people about communism, they say, well, it's not realistic. Yes, it isn't. And cybernetics isn't realistic at all, too. So, but it is funny with humans because you can really sell them stories. Create a myth, or a myth that everything will be solved by machines. And one problem is that we are creating more and more problems, like climate change in the here and now, that we might not be able to solve, because even though cyberneticists see every system as loads of different influences, humans are sometimes not so good in grasping the consequences for their actions. And cybernetics has no scientific statement. It sees everything as transmitters, as machines. So a human is just a flash transmitter. And the point of view is, if you address a transmitter in the right way, the transmitter will do what you intended. So this is how they see humans or animals, and this is how they see society. So, and because you have all these transmitters, you have to control if everything is okay. Cybernetics is surveillance. Surveillance is the basis of everything in cybernetics. So these people are promising us, and the tech bros are just cyberneticists of the third generation with a lot of drugs again. The question always is, in what kind of future do they want to lead us? And that is a question we really should address. Richard Brautigan, yes, the Grateful Dead bloke, he sketched a cybernetic utopia in 1967 with a poem. And there he says, all watched by machines of loving grace. This is his utopia. The question is, if we really want to live in a society where we are always watched by machines of loving grace, and what happens when these machines get into a bad mood. Sorry. No, it's getting fun. I'm sorry about the slides. Now we are believing in the existence of AI, so this cybernetic story that was invented to get money. And billions are invested billions in money and uncountable hours of human lifetimes. And an incredible amount of resources are invested into having this idea become true. And I think we now could ask the question if we could invest all that resources into something better, like trying to get into our climate in balance. Because the story they are telling us is they need all that resources now to find a solution in the future. But if we do not give them so many resources, they cannot break our future so much. Maybe this is a plan to stop them doing that. And that brings us to the point, what does AI need? When you listen to the advertisement story, it always sounds like you can just open an empty box and there's AI in it and it will do everything better than you ever expected. But AI doesn't hatch from an egg, and you need a lot for it to work. So what you need is resources or commodities. You need loads of water, electricity, space, humans to work for it, and possibly police and military to defend it. You need that for the production of chips, you need of the conductors, you need that of the storage facility, for the storage facilities. You need all of that to make that AI world happening. But besides the human problem, where do the resources come from? The resources do not come usually from Western countries, but from poorer countries, or if the country is not poor, like uranium in Australia, you take it from poorer regions, usually inhabited by so-called natives. So we will not get all that from here. I mean, we would have uranium here, lithium here, and rare earths, because rare earths are not so rare. Humans are just rarely as stupid as to dig them out. So we'd rather do that in the global south, and then we live in Fortress Europe. We do not want these people coming here and get some of the riches that are built. So where does all that come from? Global South does work and give resources. Western billionaires can have a good life from it. So we could have a lot of them here, and we have practically no recycling in that. This is madness, and they describe it as science. But there's a huge other story behind AI, is that AI will solve all these climate problems. AI is very good for the environment because it makes everything very effective. Effective is one of the pet words of cyberneticists. So is AI good for the environment? Well, it's like saying nuclear power is very good for the environment. If you look at one certain part of the process, you might be able to argue that. But if you look at the whole process, from the first time people dig into soil to get rare earths or uranium, and then till the point you can use it, and then even go further and look at the whole circle. So how much energy do you need to recycle or get rid of it? It's not good for the environment. I use it so many resources, you can hardly count it. So the idea of trying to fight global warming with AI is as realistic as to extinguish a fire with petrol. And while the story in Western countries is more or less that AI will take all the work from us, well, if they take the work and they still get paid, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But AI has a lot of labor in it. So looking at it, the question is it all made up by machines? And I'm sure here in the room there are enough people who remember how many times we were told it was AI doing the job, but secretly it was a human pulling the strings, remotely driving a self-driving car, or even being dressed up as a robot to do some tasks. So Gregory Kohlberger stated in a posting how to start an AI startup, hire a bunch of minimum wage humans to pretend to be AI, and second step, wait for real AI to be invented. What we see now is human work masked as AI in many places. So jokes aside, jobs behind AI, I mean, it's so important that AI has to have a good foundation. So when you need experts for a good foundation, they will probably be well educated, well paid, and get massages whenever they want, right? So looking at training and the control and moderation of AI, we find out that it is not really perfect conditions for the people who work there. It's a Wired headline, low-paid humans behind all smarts aspiring to free them from modern slavery. So that means that ChatGPT and Kerr and the other ones are neo-colonial oppression tools for humans that are already treated like horribly by the West. So whenever we use LLMs like ChatGPT, we are part of or accomplice of male-treating labors. And when you look at the side of the training these people do, and really the foundation is very, very important, you see that people a couple of years ago didn't get any training at all. And when they organized in unions, when they got together with human rights activists, journalists, scientists, and so on, it changed. Today, they sometimes get a bit. And it's often done in places like camps, refugee camps, sometimes in prisons. So it's people being under a lot of stress. And when you look at, oh, this is bloody, sorry. When you look at the jobs moderators do, you have this headline from The Guardian that people feel completely destroyed when they have to listen to everything people put in this machine. It's like the same with YouTube moderators or TikTok moderators. They have to see the most horrible things so we can have funny times. But it is part of the same cycle, of the same what we use. I mean, the nice sides of dance videos exist because someone else gets all the videos of child abuse and kittens putting it in a blender out of it. So it is for sure not that it is perfect now, but when you ask these media spokesperson of these companies, they tell you in the future it will be better because AI will solve that problem too. So in the future, that is the day when cold fusion works and many other things. What you can see is that we get fed the same child story over and over again. And it will be so much better when we believe them in the future. It can be stated that the foundations of AI are mostly really bad. It's full of biases, prejudices, and mistakes. And bad foundations produce bad results. And it can be stated that AI causes redistribution from the bottom up concerning resources as well as working conditions. So the horrible work is done in the South to make tech billionaires rich and richer. And there's a big social impact of so-called AI. Implication of AI on societies is huge. And when we talk about societies, a lot of people do not say what they mean either. And a society is more than the amount of people in a certain place. A society shares values and shares rules. And society means networking and exchanging information. This is something people from cybernetics can work with. Information, networking, exchanging information. But the problem is they see us as transmitters made of flesh. What we what we really need in a society is trust. We need trust to be able to trust the information we get from someone. And we have to trust people that they will not mug us. And this is something cybernetics cannot compete. It's the problem of trust is something that brought the Chinese government to invent social credit systems. The problem of no trust at all is one the Schufa tries to solve in Germany. Every kind of 5 stars, give me some stars, give me your opinion, is that we do not trust people because we do not know them. And this is something cybernetics can't give us, so what they give us instead is control. But societies need common grounds concerning information and concerning something cybernetics do not have, and that is ethics. There is absolutely no ethics in cybernetics. And one problem at the moment is where we get our information from. Because a couple of years ago, you had self-controlled media that provided us with information. This was not ideal because not everyone had the chance to get their voices heard. But what we have now is huge privately owned corporations that give us information. And a question we have to ask ourselves is who controls whom and who has access to information, who can spread information for what goal. There's a huge fear at the moment fed by the right wing. It's about trans and left wing people, about that Antifa, like Trump calls it. But someone put something very intelligent on the internet, as he said. Nobody is trying to turn your kids gay, but people are trying to turn your kids Nazi. Cybernetics made a crossbreeding with fascism. And we're here at the moment to experience that. And I think nobody voted for that, but we're in this situation and we have to go on with it. And there is something about fascism and technology. Someone posted a while ago that he was afraid how, the new fascism would go together with, industry or sponsored by industry, and it would use, modern technology to gain power. And this should not shock you, because this is how fascism gained power in the first place. So, one root of fascism is futurism. Benito Mussolini was futurist before he was a fascist. He invented fascism. And one sentence from the futurist manifesto is, we want to glorify war, the only cure for the world. Militarism, patriotism, the destructive gesture of anarchists, the beautiful ideas which kill, and the contempt of women. Fascists always love tech. And we have to be very careful what kind of technology we depend on that is brought and delivered by technofascists. And now the focus is a bit different, but in January it was that someone called Elon Musk was taking power by getting information, because he was getting power by accessing the information on the populace that was stored centrally. Like social security numbers, everything they had. And Zeynep Tufekci put it that we live in a society where we gave root access to our information to dictators. When people say, okay, it is really hard that Germany is not so far with digitalization and information is not centrally stored, well, that means that not one idiot who got into that central store can get all the power. The same is with the grid, with the electricity grid. If you have a centralized grid, like in the US, you have major blackouts. So, who benefits from our use of AI? It is very few that benefit from that, because we can discuss if AI exists. But it's majorly huge corporations and their owners. And it's not the society, it's not the small worker, it's not the single parent that will benefit from that. And so I would always say we have to ask if we need AI. Because there are fields where AI or machine learning can be useful, but there are fields that shouldn't have more use, as war and manipulation. And while we are feeding the machines with more and more information, we should be very aware that data is power, and we are giving it away. So we are giving it to mainly the wrong people, this kind of power. And surveillance is no end in itself. The interesting point in surveillance is not that you survey people, but that you want to change them. Shoshana Zuboff called our society surveillance capitalism. But I would rather say we live in manipulation capitalism. Because everything we do and store online is used to get back at us and can be used to manipulate us. Sometimes by gamification, sometimes by other tactics. So, surveillance is not only there to know what we are doing. Cybernetic surveillance is there to steer us on our actions and to influence us individually. And we should always ask who controls the controllers? Who has power over our information? Because with all that AI future, people want to lead us in this future where you have like a Hoover bot or something else and you never have to clean your windows again. We could ask for something else. We could ask what a good life is and how much tech and how much centralization we really need for that. And how do we get there? And not in a future where we need technology to clean up all the messes that have been done by our grandfathers, grandmothers, or us. And cybernetics will not give us an answer to that. Cybernetics will tell us to wait for the future, because everything will be better in the future. But we have the now, and we have the right for good life. And a life without fascism, because fascism is coming back at the moment, and it's loving tech. So get some people together, because fascism promises a lot, but only a few will have a good life there. And with all that despair that is there in the moment, I see it with friends in the US, I see it here, we do not have to live in despair. People fought fascism before and we can do it now. But it's time to get loud. And you don't have to be alone. You can look for 5 people, build networks, because Nazis never vanished, fascists never vanished when you ignored them. Fascists only vanish when you confront them. And this is what we have to do. We have to stand straight, and oppose fascists. And never forget that we can be in a good mood for that, and that we are not alone, because we have the right for good life and for life without fascism.
Thank you, Katika. And now we have the right to a good life with a Q&A for 10 more minutes. Do we have any questions in the audience? Yep.
Hi there. Basically, I have a little bit of a problem where you said that there's no evidence for cybernetics, which in my, I guess, association, because there's not really a definition in people's mind, is just systems modelings with inputs. But then you also say that there's climate change, and how do we know that there's climate change? I mean, yeah, we can obviously measure it, but if we want to extrapolate it, we also have to do systems modeling, and if we want to do something against it, we have to control the input variables, which then is against control. So it seems for me like there's somehow, if you disregard like cybernetics as like systems control, how can you think about climate change at all if you don't if you also disregard like classical cybernetics models like the World 3 models, for example, or stuff like this?
Well, there is proof for cybernetics. There is just no proof for the future they're promising us. And I'm not against like systems control. This is not all cybernetics. Not all system control for me is cybernetics. I am opposing the way of thinking that everything is a transmitter and that humans and animals can be controlled like transmitters. And I'm especially not liking when this way of thinking is like put on a society. Because for me, a society is more than like loads of transmitters behind each other or besides each other. So as long as they play with their models, well, they can think what they want. They can see the world how they want. But as soon as they meddle with everyone's future, that's what I'm against. And cybernetics is, we will have a talk, Honkhase and me will have a talk later about like the grandchilds of cybernetics, of cyber-libertarianism, where you can see how cybernetics made a love child with fascism, and that love child and his siblings is currently in the hearts of Elon Musk, Trump, Vance and all the others. You can see how whenever you see a human as just a transmitter or just a number, it's very easy to extinguish that person. And I'm opposing that. I don't know if that answers your question. A little bit. Oh, we can talk later.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for that talk. It was great. I think I like the parallel that you pose. In historical fascism, you often have a myth about the past, and in the fascism that we see now, cybernetics is the myth for the future that is unifying. And I would like to know which are the attack vectors that you think are most interesting to attack that myth. Are they scientific, cultural, political, otherwise?
Of fascism or cybernetics, sorry?
Of this myth.
Yeah. The myth is, I think, first thing how to oppose a myth is to say that it is a myth. I mean, it's totally fine for me that people need to have that kind of stories. But with cybernetics, the fascinating thing is that they pretend to be the scientific scientists there is on Earth, and that they actually have very little proof for a lot of they expecting or predicting in the future. But they use something that I think anti-fascist movements can learn from. They use the human nature that we are able to do magnificent things if we believe it will work in the future. That we are able to endure like horrible situation if we just believe that it will make the future for us or for someone we don't even know better. And this is something like cyberneticists as well as fascist movements get a lot of power from. And I think in telling that this is a myth, we can take some of this power off them. If that answered the question.
Any additional questions?
Yep. Thank you so much. Hello, I'm an American living here in Dresden, and I missed most of your talk, unfortunately, but I've seen the last 15 minutes or so, and what you're saying is something which resonates with me very deeply. You mentioned Trump and Elon Musk and Vance, but I see my country going into full-on fascism now under Palantir. Palantir is, to me, the more I study them, the more frightened I am of them, and they touch on everything that we are data. And I'm a student of a journalist named Whitney Webb, who years ago I thought she was a schizophrenic, and now I realize, no, she was right. They are tokenizing, digitizing everything in nature now too, is the plan, and us. And I see the EU leadership as being, in my view, they seem completely controlled by a company like Palantir and also BlackRock. And I wonder every day, do you see a way forward to peacefully get the EU Parliament away from these forces to keep that fascism off of us?
I think whatever we do, fascists will call us violent, because they will define that everything we do against them is against their rights and being violent, because this is how fascists act. They will ask for free speech as long as they can, and they will hit you on the head with it. And I think they get a lot of power by people believing that they will do more for the working class or so. Most people who vote for fascists are not the ones who will gain anything from them. And I deeply believe in analog networking and being together with people. I know people can be very annoying too, but when you have enough people, you can change everything. And I'm for analog networking as well, because it's not so easily spotted by machines. And you need time. You need time for your neighborhood, and I always say you need 5 people around you that will support you in bad situations. And I think we are all shocked how fast it is going in the US and how fast it is going in Germany too. And I think we need to address it as fascism and not as conservative, because it is fascism. What they want is a fascist state. And I think we have to form groups against it, and we have to oppose them on every bloody level. We have to oppose them locally. We have to oppose them when they buy bread in the store. We have to oppose them when they bring us their cars. And we have to oppose them when they tell us we have to send our kids to war or to the camps. If we do not do that, if we accept them, if we tolerate them, they will win. We had that before in this country. And a lot of people who believed that they couldn't be seen as Jews or as Unionists, a lot of people who thought very positively about their future ended up in camps and trenches. And I think we have to protect each other from that. And what we can do is really work together in every part, in the churches, in the unions, wherever we go, protect the libraries. Because we have to stand together. Otherwise, fascism, and especially that kind of technofascism, is getting its tentacles into our brains and divides us. So accept people, even if they are annoying sometimes, but never accept fascism.
Thank you, Katika.